You're listening to the Girl Dad Show.
Welcome to Season 3 of The Girl Dad Show, where we explore the intersection of parenthood and entrepreneurial spirit. Join me and some incredible guests as we share tips and tricks for finding work-life balance and making a positive impact not only on the world, but also our families. Let's create a fulfilling life together. It's The Girl Dad Show, Season 3. Ariem, thank you so much for joining me on The Girl Dad Show today.
Thank you for having me, man.
I'm so excited. It's been a long time in coming, and I am really, really glad to be able to do a deeper dive into you and your journey and you as a dad, because we have always been bonded by our conversations around life and philosophy around life and dadhood, and you are now also a grandfather. So I'm very excited to learn more about this stuff because I don't think we've ever spent the time to dive in deep. But before we get into all of that, let's jump right in and start by telling the listeners what you do for a living.
What do I do for a living? I guess you got to start with what I have done for a living, which is since graduating high school, I've been in design. So I've merged from graphic design to web design into product design, production design, and that's taken me through Silicon Valley. And now I'm doing project management for design.
Nice. So all about design. I love it. And right now you are doing project management for design. So how did that happen?
That was actually a recruiter and a VP of design over at Disney looking at my experience and saying, your experience and what you've done for 25 years plus fits what we need over here. So they were like, hey, would you like to, they actually first asked me to be their design ops manager. But then after that interview, I interviewed for a DPM, which is a design project manager. They loved it, and that's how I switched from being a actual designer to project managing design projects.
Wow. And so I'm assuming the reason why this role is in existence is because it's a larger company, or is this an actual function that services other places as well too?
Column A and column B, because, when you are, it has a lot to do with size, because when you're a small shop, like an agency or one person, you're doing and wearing all these hats. As you get larger and you start specializing in, okay, we have our designer of apps, we have our designer of interface, our designer of XYZ. Now you need to have someone above that that's doing more design strategic thinking. So that's where your design managers come in, your project managers come in. And that's kind of where I was riding. I was hybriding between doing the actual production of art, but also driving the strategy. And, when I did it for so many years, people were like, hey, you do a lot of the strategy and leading teams and leading initiatives. We could use that help over here.
Got it. So it's like it's like a column A, column B. That's your way of saying both, right?
Hybrid. Yeah.
Okay.
Column A, column B. Yeah.
Ariem, I'm more good looks than brain, so you gotta walk me through some of this stuff. All right, great. Okay, so that's awesome. So then, just so I understand how this works, so there is a head of design as well, and then the head of design has someone that's managing the team, and then someone that's project managing. I'm very
it's different for every company
curious.
Because design is very, let's say, fluid within organizations. So
right.
If we do a small company, you're going to have a designer, and the designer's going to take care of everything that's visual. But as you get bigger and you start producing more things, you now need to have a design team. And when you grow from there, you need design teams, plural. And then when you have design teams, plural, you now need creative directors, VP of design, senior VP of all design. So depending on the size of your design team, that depends on what levels you have and how many. So, you could have a design manager and 2 designers underneath them. Yeah. Or you could have no design managers and have a team of 20 designers. It all depends on the organization.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and it's just like people realizing that design is becoming a major function of business. People always know, I need a project manager for my product team. I need a project manager for my engineers. Well, you also have designers. So project manager for designers. Same thing. Major function.
That is very understandable. That's a way easier way to explain. You should have started with that, Ariem. Now I understand it. That makes a lot more sense.
Well, see, I don't have the looks like you. I have the gift of gab, so I keep talking, and then people eventually get what I'm saying.
I love that you're leaning into this looks thing. Thank you. Keep telling all your friends about that. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about what big projects you're working on right now. So what's the big things that are on your mind?
So right now, I just finished a major project with Disney. Their public-facing diversity effort, which was called Reimagine Tomorrow. It's still called that, but they changed direction. They've kind of pulled back from it. They lost their chief diversity officer. So that was probably one of the best projects I've worked on just in my career, period. Not just Disney, but it was a great project with great people. There's a lot of great effort behind it. And my team was sunsetted off of it about a month ago. So now I'm looking forward to what my next project is.
Oh, awesome. That's very cool. It's got to be a very exciting company to work for. I definitely wish I was there right now. I work there right now because my kids' age. I feel like the benefits of being at Disney right now, it would be tremendous because Disney is so expensive at the theme parks and all the stuff.
If you are a parent, it's the best place to work if you live within distance of one of their parks. So whether Orlando or Anaheim, if you can get to those two, like on a frequent basis, it's the best place to work if you have kids.
Yeah, my kid brother, I guess it's weird saying kid brother, my younger brother, because he's like an old man now, but my younger brother used to work at Disney as well, and we would travel in the early days of our kids, and then when he moved off from Disney and then we had to pay for it on our own, I was like just shocked at how much more expensive it got, and I was man, it's almost worth having a job there for just that reason alone. But yes, very, very fun. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Tell me about your kids.
So I don't call them kids anymore because mine are completely grown. My youngest is 27, my middle is 29, and my oldest will turn 34 next month. So
nice.
I did the dad thing back in the 90s.
Nice.
Through, all of them going through college and everything. So now I'm a grandparent now. So I'm doing a different level of, I guess you can say parenting, because I didn't pay attention to or no one told me about parenting adults, which is very different than parenting kids.
Tell me more.
So there's always this thinking of, once they're 18, they're done. They start their families. They leave the house. They go to college. Yeah, not so much. Not the physical leaving, but like just parenting a adult is very different because you have to get to know them all over again, but you also can't rely on the relationship you had before. You can't be like, I'm dad, I know better, do what I say. You can't be like, I did that before, do what I say. It's more like an advice thing. It's more like here's an example of what you might want to do, or hey, go talk to someone else. But, and then there's things where like you disagree. You're like, I want to strangle you, but I love you. So let me just wait until next time and we'll talk later. So it can be a struggle because, you want to be there for your adult children, but they're adults and they may not do and make the best decision that you want them to, but it's their life. So then you're like, how do I become not their friend, but like, how do I still give them guidance? How do I still be dad, in my 50s and not be like, you know what you're talking about?
Why is it not a friend then?
Well, for me, a friend, I look at friends and a parent-child situation relationship differently because it can be a friend also, but I think primarily it has to be, there's not only is there a biological connection, but there's a generational connection. There's also a spiritual connection, and you don't always have that with friends. So for me, when people are talking about, my daughter and I are best friends, that's a great thing. But beneath that, you're still mother-daughter, you're still father-son, you're still father-daughter, which is, I'll say there's a little expectation there, but there's also something where that never goes away. Like you can fall out with a friend and like, we haven't spoken in years, but when you're a parent, you're always a parent. You can't take that away from you. So that's where I'm like, friend is not the goal when they're an adult. Friend is like an addition. Like, we can also be friends, but we're parent, child first. And that's like the foundation. Like that needs to be good because you can't be someone's friend if, you don't respect them, they don't love you, that type of thing. So you've hopefully, as a parent, built up love and trust, and they love you and trust you. And then on top of that, you get like the cherry on top of friendship. But, it's I think some people take that for granted also. Like, I'm just gonna be this cool dad, and we're gonna be like friends, best friends, and they don't realize that what they're doing is that friendship is just like a nice whipped cream layer on top of the sundae that you built. So that's always there.
Yeah, so it's deeper is what you're saying. It's not binary, it's additive. So you're not saying that you can't be friends. You're saying that no, friends plus. Yeah.
You're also friends. Yes.
You're also friends. Yeah, that's really cool. That's very cool. And it's also really cool to hear that you are consciously thinking about this as you have adult children. So what has that transition been like? When did you know? I mean, I'm just more asking for me personally. Was there a specific age that you're like, oh, it's changing? Or was it kind of just more through osmosis?
It really changed when they were in college, I think. And when they finished college, that was kind of, it wasn't age. It wasn't like an 18. It was like a 24. It wasn't like a 16. It was when they started going out and making additional relationships, when they started kind of living on their own, when they kind of like weren't under our umbrella.
Yeah.
You got to see their personality, and you also got to see their fortitude, like what they were made of. Like, can they push through this? Do they have the grit to be on their own and be like an adult? And like, that's when you say, oh, this is not the same as it was before. So it's kind of like when they first get that taste of, I'm no longer your dependent. I'm no longer, your little girl. I'm now a student, or I'm now a fiance, or I'm now a full-time lawyer, whatever that is. There's a transition when they move from being your quote-unquote independent to being a younger person.
And when you said college-ish is when you started to notice this kind of forming of their independence, but did you notice that universally across all three kids, or was that just kind of generally speaking that age group?
They were all at different times, but generally, yeah. My youngest, I probably saw her move into like adulthood. I would say a little earlier in her years than my older two. My oldest, actually, I saw her adulthood the latest in her years. And my middle daughter, she was kind of somewhere in the middle.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, they all did it like at a different time. It wasn't like they all hit 24 and like that thing switched. They all hit, once they graduated high school, it didn't all happen at the same time for each of them. They were all different.
How did you know when you had to make the switch?
Mostly conversation. When you talk to your daughter, there's things where, you understand where she's coming from or how she answers things. But when you see her have a more mature response or a more weighted response, or like, you're like, wow, I didn't even think about that. Or, wow, I can't think of you like my little girl anymore because you're not. You're this full-grown adult. So now I can talk to you peer-to-peer almost. And that's kind of when it happened. It was mostly a conversation. It wasn't even actions that they did. It was in their conversation with me. I'm like, wow, this is another fully developed brain that can pose things and feel things. And like, just I guarantee you, one day you're going to be wild. Like, who is this?
Yeah.
Like, this is not my little baby anymore. This is like a full grown person. That's when the switch happens.
Well, unfortunately for me, I already feel like that. Like, even right now with my 6-year-old girl,
no,
it's different.
No,
it's very different.
I have a 27-year-old who used to talk to my wife like they were best friends since she was 6 years old. Like, they would talk like they were peers.
Yeah.
And my wife and my youngest daughter, they're like best friends. They are so much alike. They look alike. They act alike. But they've always talked. They never talked like mother and daughter. They've always talked like peers.
Yeah.
But for me, I never had that relationship with her. And my acknowledgement of her being an adult was, maybe when she was 20, I don't know, maybe 22, 24, and had conversations like she really has a fully developed opinion, and she's like weighing things like, yeah, it's going to be, and I, when they were younger, so many conversations were awesome, middle school, high school, and like they're just a little evolved from when they were younger. But once they hit that one thing where they're like a full adult, you think you're having an adult conversation with a 6-year-old. Wait until she's 24, 26.
Yeah.
She's going to floor you.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, I can wait.
You can wait.
Yeah, I
It'll fly
totally
by.
can wait. Yeah, I'm already like so upset how fast time is going right now. I'm like so annoyed that I feel like they're growing too fast even right now.
Right.
It's like so frustrating, and
Right.
just makes me wonder, like, if I'm like enjoying it enough, or I'm like, living in the moment enough, because
Right.
even right now I feel like I notice how fast they're growing, and it's painful to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask another question about the adult thing? No. I'm like really curious about this, because I think that some of the barometers for success that I've heard, especially when I talk to older parents that have adult children, is like, they qualify success now as like being able to want to be around you. I'm sorry, the kids wanting to be around you, and that's kind of like the goal, is like, you're like the best thing since sliced bread when they're growing up, and then they kind of like, they're too cool for school for you, and you're like embarrassing stage, and then they go into the stage where they're like trying to find their independence, and then they kind of grow apart, and most parents don't know how to make that switch from being the lack of better words, the superior, and now to more of like an equal level, right? And they don't know how to make that switch, and so you often find these kind of contentions between adult children and their parents, and I've heard this quite a bit. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm going to speak for my wife also. But I think for us, we measured success as parents as being there for them and providing for them and putting them first. And that sounds very simple and like a lot of what it should be, but we both come from families where we weren't put first as the kids.
Oh.
And it put there's a lot of issues with me and my siblings, with my wife and her siblings, and like there's just a lot of issues that everyone's dealing with. And I think the reason that my wife and I really, really worked, I mean, we just celebrated 30 years of marriage, we have these adult kids, and when we knew we were doing something right was when our kids, 5, 10, 15 years old, they didn't mind hanging out with us. They, when we did something, they were like, let's do this with mommy and daddy. So we saw that we were doing something right. I think that when people look at if my kids want to hang around me, that's success. I think that's true for you, because just the same way that all men aren't a monolith and all black men aren't a monolith, all parents aren't a monolith. So success for this parent may not be success for that parent. And for us, I had very basic things I want to provide for my kids based on what I didn't feel I had as a kid. So, I didn't have a stable home growing up. I made sure my girls had a stable home. I made sure my girls were provided for. So like I gave them, I didn't do this. We gave them just a loving, stable home with opportunity and education and friends and family and love. And we saw that the benefits of that and what we knew we were going in the right way was just 3 happy little girls that people love being around, and they love doing things like them being happy and growing up and being educated. And we were like, hey, we've done something right, because we gave them what we believe every child should have: safety, security, a home, love, opportunities, experiences. So when they became adults, we were like, hey, we gave you all of this. Now you can take it from there. But now as an adult parent, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you, I don't have to provide all these things that I did before, but I will give you some advice. If something comes up and you need like certain type of help and I can do it, I will do that when it's dire. But you as an adult have to figure some of these things out, and we will guide you and we will be there in case, there's something happens. But, and then along this way, you can see 3 daughters take very different routes. And not only their interaction with us, but just like how they are as a person. And it's funny because, you have 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 or 5. Kids aren't a monolith either. So, sometimes you're surprised, were you all raised in the same home? Because you're very different, whether it be, how you carry yourself or your integrity or whatever it is. So, having 3 adult girls, we also have 3 very different relationships because, now that it's adult to adult, you don't have the option to say, you know what, I don't like how you're doing this, or I don't like your view on this, and I'm going to step back. Or you can say, I don't like how you're doing this, and I'm going to fight you to make sure I change your mind. So you now have that as well. So I think it's parent by parent as how they determine what's successful, because I'm sure there's parents who probably don't talk to their kids frequently, but they're successful because, maybe they're both very independent. Maybe they're very stubborn and they don't need that whole, hey, we're friends. And then there are probably some who are like, hey, we're just alike. We love each other. We hug all the time. So I think success is like relationship to relationship.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually really good for me to hear, because I'm like thinking about the relationship that I'm most likely going to have with my kids is going to be fairly different than the relationship that I have with my parents. But as you say this, I'm like realizing that, it'll be fairly intentional. But I don't think there's anything wrong with my relationship with my parents. I think that it's literally what you just said, right? It's like, it's fairly independent. I respect them and I love them and I appreciate what they sacrifice to provide for me a better life. But I definitely know that I'm probably going to have a little bit more of an emotional connection and a presence with my kids than my parents do. Yeah.
Because our parents come from a time where, especially men, hey, you don't show emotion. When you fall as a kid, your father's like, hey, walk it off. Instead of like, hey, are you okay? So there's a very different type of father that exists now, because the father can be emotional and attentive. They're going to be work from home dads now. Like when although I'm a kid of the 70s and 80s, there almost were no work from home dads. There were no dads who were like there for like parent teacher night, unless they came with what I'm saying? It was mostly a mom job to raise kids. Now you have a lot of dads stepping up and being forward and taking the lead sometimes, or sharing it or whatever. So there's going to be a very different generation of people who've grown up with either a present father or a dominant father emotionally, which is almost hasn't happened in the previous generations. Dads were these go to work, come home, make me a steak, and I go to bed and do it again. You know what I'm saying? Or, they cut the grass and that's it. Now you have, dads taking their daughter to see Barbie, dads doing makeup, dads doing dance. This didn't happen a generation or two ago. So it's a very different time for not just kids, but specifically girls and boys. When boys see like their dads can, it's not bad word to put on makeup and play. It's not bad to put on a dress and play with your sisters. Like there's just so many things that you're allowed to do and just be a true kid versus these aisles that used to be in. Like when I was little, boys got cars, girls got dolls, and there was no in between. You know what I mean? Like boys go outside, girls play in the bedroom. And now it's just like whoever you are, here's what you want to do, where you want to do it. And it's going to be a whole new generation. It's already showing it. Like my daughter's generation, I don't even know what the term is for that generation anymore. But, people who were born in the 90s, 2000s, they're already expecting a different world based on how we raised them. So now your girls in that generation is going to expect a different world based on how you raised them. So it's just going to be different every generation.
And Ariem, I think it's Z. I think your kids are Generation Z is what they call them. And then my kids are Generation A. They're back to Alpha again after that.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
So I don't know well, maybe my kids are borderline millennial. Because I'm Gen Z, I think. Right?
No, you're X.
I'm Gen X? I don't know. It's one of those generations.
Gen X, yeah. I think. I don't really know.
I don't know.
Yeah, who cares? That's very, very interesting way of looking at it. And I think that it's absolutely something that is accurate in the sense that there will be a change in what this looks like that's never been done before. And I think that that's absolutely accurate. And we're already starting to see, how that's going to change even in like, for example, your kids. And then obviously my kids will be growing up with the different mindset of what a dad is. And so, it's already happening, unfolding as we go. What about, so you had mentioned your childhood really providing you this ecosystem that you saw that you wanted to improve upon. And so now you feel like you were successful because you were able to accommodate those things or adapt those things and see the success or the fruit of your labors for doing that. What does that look like in this era? Like, so what are you now focusing on in the next stage of parenthood as your kids now become parents themselves? What's this next era you think? What are you speculating it's going to be like?
Well, it's two major things. One is trying to impose on my daughter the priority we put on our kids when they were little.
Yeah.
And hoping that some of that influences her to prioritize her daughter. There's a difference in methods and opinions on raising kids and how you prioritize them. Some people are like, hey, I need my me time. My wife and I didn't have me time because we didn't choose to do that. We chose to, our first date after having kids was when our first date was to the supermarket when my oldest was 12 and she could sit home for like a half an hour. We go to the supermarket, that was our first date, and then we would come back. But we got married in 93 and never went on a date or honeymoon or anything, probably until the girls were out of high school. So like it's not a poor me or like, oh, you had a bad, it wasn't that. We enjoyed the effort of making sure that the girls were okay. And if it wasn't okay to leave them or we had no one we trusted, we just didn't go. We didn't make that a priority. We made them a priority. So what I'm trying to do as an adult parent is reminding my daughter of, hey, you're who you are and where you are because we made sure that you came first. And, a lot of younger parents, I don't feel prioritize that. I think they look at it as, and this could be generational in my thinking as well, but they look at it as, I'm part of this as well, and I need my space and my time. And then let me make time for my child. Let me make time for my spouse. Let me make time for work. And, for me, I prioritize, like the kids come first, and then I got to make sure that all the bills are paid, and then make sure my wife is okay. And then there's me. My me time was like walking from the bus to the house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of where I came from. And because I intentionally said that I'm going to make sure that all these things are going to be done before I take care of me. And this may be wrong to expect or impose or hope for, but I don't see the downside of prioritizing your child, because for me, when you have one, that's your job. It's your responsibility. It's your lifeblood. That's your child. And, their safety comes first, then their happiness and like their development, all that. And as an adult parent, that's mostly what I'm doing with my one daughter. My other two daughters, I'm getting to, not that I'm getting to know her as an adult, but I'm getting used to an adult relationship with my daughter, who I've always had like a father-daughter relationship with. Like, I've been able to talk to her about like career and managing things, and like it's very different from, hey, how was school today? So that's one thing. And then my youngest daughter, that relationship is a lot of us talking about like future planning, some business conversations, business theory, like some philosophy. So it's different with all three, but it's amazing to have your children be like these adults that you have these conversations with, you have these goals with, these dreams, and then you can throw things off of, hey, what's a good idea for this? So, for me, it's just, and the big thing, which you're going to see if you haven't seen already, is they're such different people.
Yeah.
And what you say and do with this one is very different than this one, different than that one. And it's like, it's almost a pleasure to say like, wow, I'm really, really, really getting to know you. I think for me, it's kind of an echo for me, because I had the opportunity to homeschool my girls when they were probably like 4 years up to middle school. And it's some of the best times as a parent, because I got to see 3 different personalities start to develop. And if I didn't have the opportunity to homeschool them, my wife and I both homeschooled them, but there was a time where like I took over mostly so she can get her degree, or she took over so I can go work or whatever it was. But that time I got to homeschool, I didn't notice the very different personalities of who they were. Even as young women at like 7 years old, 10 years old, whatever it was, I could see that they were very different people, and I could see the beginnings of their personalities. So now when I'm parenting them as an adult, getting to know them as an adult, that personality that I saw back in those days, what's that, 20 years ago? Something like 20 years ago. It's just like, it's intensified.
And how much of that do you think comes from the fact that you homeschooled them? I didn't even know you did that. That's fascinating. And why did you do that? Isn't that a huge sacrifice for you to stop working so that your wife can go to school? I mean, what's the income looking like? I mean, now I'm just like getting stressed out thinking about it.
Oh, we struggled. We struggled for many, many years. But the reason we homeschooled was my oldest daughter is so intelligent. And we were in Philadelphia at the time. And she was like in, I don't know, second grade. But she could read a fifth grade level. But they wouldn't give her a fifth grade book. They were like, we can only do what grade she's in. And we're like,
oh, weird.
She's intelligent. Why can't you? So we looked into homeschools. Like, our option is keep her in this school where they blunt her education, pay for a private school, which we can't afford, or homeschool. Well, it's like, we can't homeschool. We don't have degrees. We're not teachers. And in Philadelphia, you didn't need to be. So we looked into it, and we could do it. So we pulled them all out of school, and my oldest daughter flourished because she's one of the people who, it floored me today. She would have a book in each hand, and she would read and read and read and read. She was phenomenal. She still is.
Weird.
But she's just, her intelligence is through the roof. So homeschooling allowed her to go at her pace. So I don't remember who did first. I don't know if my wife homeschooled, then I came in, whichever it was, but we worked. One of us was full-time while the other one was homeschooling and part-time. And then at one point, I think it was she worked and had to go to school. And that's when I homeschooled, and I think I worked part-time. But we homeschooled them for, it wasn't their entire career, but it might have been most of elementary for all three of them. And I think they went back to public schools, I think when my youngest was right before middle school. So it might have been like for 3 or 4 years that they were homeschooled.
Wow.
But I think that helped them definitely become who they are, because they got a lot of, they weren't restricted, they weren't repressed, like they got to be themselves. And I truly believe that opportunity for us to homeschool them helped them become the women who they are today.
Yeah, and probably deepen the relationship and understanding of who they were as well too, because you get to see them for such a core swath of their time. I mean, I'm missing like a good 6 or 7 hours of their development right now because they're going to normal school. I don't know what is that called. What do I call that? Because I'm sending them to school, but it's a very interesting thought. I mean, it's very fascinating. I also am just very impressed by the fact that you just kind of glossed over a huge thing that's really important to me, which is you muscled through a lot of fiscal hardships to make this happen. So when you said, hey, this is really important for me to put them first, you guys did this as a team. So you guys were fairly unified in this kind of vision and values of your family with you and your wife, to the point where you were even doing part-time work, which I'm assuming was basically just to cover additional funds to provide this atmosphere and environment for your kids.
Yeah, I mean, we primarily supported the girls, but we also supported each other, because at the time I was in design in my first decade of design work. So trying to find more and more design work, and neither one of us had finished college when we got married. But during the time when my girls were homeschooled, my wife went back to school, got her degree, her associate. Then when she had the time, she went back and got her bachelorette. Then she had time, she went back and got her master's. So over the years, not only did we have this time with the girls, but the girls got to see my wife prioritize education. They got to see me prioritize work and providing. So, I never went back and got my degrees, whatever, but, my wife is even now finishing her doctorate. She'll be Dr. Anthony, hopefully by end of the year. So
awesome.
My girls, and all my girls had graduated college, and, my middle daughter has a master's. My youngest is talking about getting a master's after she got her bachelorette. So that time was rough for us because, we not only did we prioritize them, but bills had to be paid. And like, I wasn't thinking career. I was thinking I got to get a gig that I know how to do so I can pay the bills, pay the rent, pay the food, pay gas, whichever. And actually, just a little sidebar, I didn't realize I had a career until 30 years in. Like, I saw like there's a pattern of what I did over these years, and I looked at it as I'm a provider and this is what I can do, so let me keep doing it. Looking back 30 years, like, oh yeah, I just built a career without going to college or doing all this design stuff. So that also an example for my daughters to see, like, what you're good at, what you want to do can sustain you, but you can also do better than that. So they all can and will do better than me because they have more education than me. They have a better home foundation than me. So I'm looking forward to the day when they just go, I've been doing this for whatever years, and we saw how you did it, we saw how mommy did it, we saw how you two did this together. I'm looking forward to the days when they provide for their children and their spouse, whatever it might be. But a lot of what I really strived, whatever that word is, to do, even thinking this through college, through high school was, I wanted to be married and provide for, and have a great family and provide for them. And that was really like my honest, humble goal coming out of high school, above whatever career goals that other people had. I felt that was a major piece that I was missing growing up. So I wanted to make sure that I could turn around and do that for my family. And I've done that. And now I'm in this next phase of, now I have these adult children. I have a granddaughter. It's like, it's a different.
Yeah, but your career is also like fairly illustrious and successful now too. Over the last 5 or 6 years that I've known you, it's been fun to watch you hop from one unique role and company to another. And it's almost like the lesson that I'm calling from this is that there's not one single way. It's like you can always find multiple ways, but you're kind of doing your career now, for a lack of better words. Yeah, you're kind of like doing what you normally, I guess, again, there's a normal word, but normal would have done. You're actually, you're doing it in reverse, which is very cool to see, and also very good for people to see, right? And also our kids to see.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think that, now knowing your history, it's really interesting to know that you really prioritized it. You really prioritized being a dad, hyper focused, and that's really fascinating. And in a lot of ways, I'm doing a lot of different things too, and it's like a lot of parallels that I'm pulling from this conversation because I had kids later. So I had, I'm in my 40s and I just had kids, right? So like I'm doing this, most of, our kids' friends are, 15 years my junior.
Right.
And I'm doing this in a different anomalous way as well too. And it's pretty interesting to think about like how no kid is the same. There's no parent that's the same either. And there's paths for different ways. And really it's just like the values that you have and the visions and goals that you want, and really making those sacrifices intentionally.
And also there's the reflection of, having kids young. We had 3 girls by the time, by at least 25 for both of us, I believe. But the trade-off is, you at your age right now, young, have so much career experience and wisdom. But at 25, we had the energy to keep up with them. That's the big difference. Like,
yeah.
I really understand why people say, I want to have my career in order, and I want to do this, and I want to do this, and have all this set up, and then have a family. And I get that, but I would not swap that for the amount of energy I had to be with them. Like 3 little girls at home homeschooling takes so much energy.
Yeah.
3 little girls on vacation, 3 little girls at the beach, 3 little girls when 7 other little girls come over. Like, and the energy we had back then, like I give it up to every parent over 35, 40, and 50 who have their first kids. Yeah. Because I'm tired now. With my granddaughter. And when I see, like, I used to work at Apple and Netflix, and I see guys my age like, oh, we're going to have our first. I'm like, your first? Like, wait, the math is that when they're 18, they're like, yeah, we know. I'm like, okay, but you're just going to be tired because I don't think parents understand until they have their first or even their second. It's not just the physical draining. It's the emotional draining. It's this spiritual training. Like you are, depending on what parent you are, and there's no right or wrong way to be a parent, but, I used to just be so anxious. Like, I just want to make sure I'm doing this right. I want to make sure they're okay. Is she going to be okay if I, whatever this, I just want them to be healthy. I just want them to be good. And like, let alone trying to get sleep, just the mental gymnastics of, I just don't want to ruin my daughter as she goes forward. Like, did I do that right? Did I say this right?
Yeah.
Am I disciplining her right?
Yeah.
I don't want to give her too much cereal because I don't want that to be bad, but we can sneak over. Like, everything is just like, I don't want her to get hurt.
Overanalyzing it.
Yeah. And like, that just wears you out. And, you do that with a 40-hour job. You add a spouse, you add a dog, you add a mortgage. Like, it's just like, it's the world on you. So it's a lot, no matter what age people have families. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. I love it. This episode of The Girl Dad Show is brought to you by Owners Club. As a business owner myself, I know firsthand how challenging the journey can be. Whether it's having someone that I can ask a very tactical question to, or just being able to share my big successes without guilt. Building a business is a lonely journey, and it does not have to be. After building and coaching dozens of businesses to success, there is one insight that is so obvious and simple, yet hard to execute. And that is network equals net worth. And so if you're a growth-minded, supportive, smart, and hardworking business owner looking for a community of like-minded entrepreneurs to build with, look no further than the Owners Club. You will make lifelong friends and build your business that works for you. You can learn more online at owners.club. Ariem, let me jump into my rapid-fire questions I like to ask every guest. Okay, so, and I have one sneak one for you because you're the more experienced 1,000 miles ahead of me, or 1,000 steps ahead of me, girl dad. So I do have a sneak question for you that I want to include in my rapid fire. All right, let's start. Number one, what advice do you have for other parents or soon-to-be parents?
Okay, for soon-to-be parents, you can never be prepared. You think you are. You think you know what you're doing. You don't. Just to be honest, you can't plan. You can't say this date. Just hang on and enjoy the ride. You can't prepare. You can't. That's it.
Fair. Very good. All right. Number two, and I actually completely agree with that. And so if I can go back, I would totally start earlier because there's no planning for it. It's like,
you can't.
Yeah. I was like, I thought I was more ready. And I'm like, that was stupid. There's no getting ready.
They come in your
this.
life and just totally take over your life. And you just got to be like, okay, this is where we're going.
All right. So if you could go back and tell yourself one thing before having kids, what would you tell yourself?
Ooh. To enjoy it more.
Man, that's a good one. Really, really good. That hits me right here, right now, at this moment in this show. All right. Now, next one. What is the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself after becoming a parent?
I think the most surprising thing is that I learned that I believed I was right in how I prioritized my family before everyone and everything else. Because I always questioned myself, like, am I being selfish? Is this the right thing to do? Is it the right way to be? Because not everyone, not even family, agreed with me prioritizing who I prioritize and how. There are people who didn't like my wife when I chose my wife. There are people who did say, why do you have 3 girls? Like, why are you doing this? But the thing that surprised me was I realized, I don't know how many years in, but like, I was like, you know what? I was right. We were right. We chose the right people. We raised our daughters the right way. We were right. Like, this is the right way for our family to be. So that was the most surprising thing, was like, you know what? I wasn't off. Like, because just in life, there's a lot of negative and ulterior routes that are marketed, or people like to take the easy route. This was nowhere near the easy route. This was the hardest route you could do at, like, we got married at 22 years old. We had 3 kids. And it was a hard route, but it was the right route. That thing that said, this is the right thing to do, and this is how we're going to do it, regardless of who else is in our life or who chooses not to be in our life. We were right. So here we are 30 years later.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good feedback. I think that you're absolutely correct that we, so often are so scared to do what we know is right or what we want to do because we're so mired by the naysayers and
Yeah.
people that follow the status quo.
Yeah.
And it's hard to
Even when they're
innovate.
your family.
I was actually going to say it's worse with your family.
It's worse when you're your family. Because you would expect, hey, you're my mom, you're my dad, you should be on my side. When they're like, why are you doing this? Like, what do you mean, why am I doing this? It's the right thing to do. So it's harder when it's your family, but
It's
you gotta
hard.
go through it. You got to
That's right.
keep pushing.
That's right. Yeah. And then the family. Yeah. I mean, we could talk about a whole nother hour just about that because family, the quick version of what I was going to say is that family also feels more comfortable speaking their mind. And so
Yeah.
they're more quick to tell you things that are negative or
Right.
potentially damaging to your psyche or confidence. And then it accidentally stirs imposter syndrome and this sense of insecurity.
Right.
And to innovate or try something that you feel is good in your gut. So, yeah, thank you for saying that. That's really important.
Yep.
Okay. So to kind of switch gears a little bit, what's your favorite business book? Or just book, in your case? Because it could be about design too, like that, I guess.
I think my favorite book is The Four Agreements
Oh, it's a great one.
because it speaks to my wife and our integrity. Like, it's very simple, but it's very hard because there's so many distractions to not be impeccable with your word. There's so many distractions to not take things personally. There's so many distractions to not just do good and do your best work. And, with those four agreements in that book, it's like, this can't be wrong. So, I want to keep it in my rotation for a quarterly or yearly reading, but I don't. But it's so simple. It's just a nice reminder. But that's my favorite life book. It works for business. It works for, relationships. It works for personal. It works for design. It's just one of the greatest things I've ever read.
Yeah, it's a really good ethos. I couldn't agree more. And it's universal across it all. Very good. All right, this is my special. I have two sneak questions. Okay, this is what I've heard. I don't know. I've heard that daughters are typically easier to raise when they're younger because they're emotionally more intelligent. They are quicker to learn about social cues and all those other things, and they're less destructive physically, right? And then this is what I've heard, that around 11 or 12, it switches, and a house full of girls is very, very challenging and difficult for the father for about 4 or 5 years before you become their best friend again. Confirm, deny, comment, please.
It's all crap.
Is it all crap? Okay.
So here's what it is. Yes, girls are easier to raise physically because boys are just like animals.
Yeah.
Most of us are pretty dumb.
Yeah,
I'm pretty dumb.
I'm still, yeah.
Me too. Me too.
I still hurt myself and do dumb things. Yeah.
And we'll go to our wife goes, "Oh, I always wanted boys." Like, no, you didn't. You don't want boys. It's just like having it's like having dogs that can talk. It's really what it is. If you give a dog thumbs and they can talk, that's having sons. That's really what it is.
I love it.
Girls, for a father, I think are easier because unless you're a very emotional man, there's a distance between you and your daughters. So it's easier for you because you're like, oh, I don't have to yell. I don't have to, this is easy. They're not breaking anything. They're fine.
Yeah.
But then in that age thing where it clicks, so there is no, well, I will say there is no. Girls, again, aren't monoliths. So they don't all click at 16 and then they come back to be your best friend. What happens is, what happened for me is our oldest at 16, she thought she knew everything and she stepped to my wife. And that happened and it never happened again. My wife took care of it. She killed it. I don't know who you think you are, but I'm mom. This is our house. So they had that and they never had that again. My younger two, they probably in high school had a little bit, okay. To be honest, I kind of freaked out when my youngest was in high school because one day she came down the stairs, had these shorts on, and I just freaked. And this is not me.
Yeah.
I was like, you are not wearing those to school. Who said you could? And so my middle daughter calls my wife and goes, Daddy's freaking out because she's wearing these little shorts. My wife gets on the phone. She's like, it's okay. They're not that bad. I'm like, have you seen these shorts?
Yeah.
So like, that's as bad as I got.
Yeah.
But I've always been their friend. And my wife is she calls herself the bad guy because she has a more, what's the word? She has a more stricter tone when it comes to discipline.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm very even keeled. My voice almost never raises, so it never seems like I'm ever riled or upset. And I think it's taken differently by my daughters when I'm upset with them versus when she's upset. Because when she's upset, you know it. It's like, oh, well, I can hear her coming.
It's on. Yeah.
The walls are shaking. It's on. When I'm upset with them or I'm disappointed, me saying, I'm disappointed what you did, my middle daughter would start crying. And like, that was it. Like, she was like, wait, Daddy's disappointed. So I was never that whole, it's unfair to my wife, but like my girls growing up through high school, for me, it was kind of simple. I was kind of like, I wasn't the fun dad or that, but like, I didn't have that strife, and they didn't have a strife with their mom either. It was just like it was kind of like just a evolution of what we built before. So there really was no change and come back to be friends. We've kind of just grown and got deeper and deeper into, you know what? Mom and dad are cool. Let's go do this. Let's do that. So it's just been a evolution of a deeper and deeper relationship. So we never really had like that switching back and forth of, now you're friends again or stay away from it.
Oh, good. Well, that's helpful to know. So now I feel a lot better about this transition, because I feel like I'm super cool and awesome whenever I go downstairs from work, and then I'm just nervous.
Well, you also think you're good looking, so I mean, you're just
I'm very delusional already.
You're very delusional already. Once you center yourself, you'll be a good dad.
I like that you do live the. I mean, in all seriousness, I do like that you kind of permeate the 4 agreements even in your parenting. Because I don't know if you realize you just talked about number 2. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. That's a whole nother podcast episode. Okay, Ariem, bringing us home. Last question. When you're not restarting, or not restarting, but literally like embarking on your illustrious professional career and or being this really prescient and thoughtful father and grandfather, what does Ariem do on his downtime? What's his fun stuff? Or are you still not doing anything for yourself?
It's funny you say that, because I was just talking to my wife about how different I am launching this business than I have with anything else. She's seen me be selfless with everything, because support her, support my daughter, support other people.
Yeah.
And then now, now that I'm starting this business, she's like, this is, I think, the first time I saw you do something just for you. And I'm like, I think that's why I'm so excited, because I can be selfish, not in a bad way, but just like, this business I'm starting, that's a me thing. It's not like I don't have to support the girls anymore. I don't have to support the house anymore. So my downtime, well, I still draw, and that's my art is my I love to draw and paint and stuff like that. But growing this business and doing something for me that I love, and will love, and hopefully will bring my daughters and family into it, and have them like, when I'm gone, they'll still be like, oh, this is what Dad started, or this is what Granddad started, and we're still building on top of it. But yeah, that my downtime right now is I'm loving starting this business and doing my art on the side.
Oh, it's amazing. And is it okay time to talk about said business? Can you share a little bit more?
Said business, it's not a secret. So after 30, 40 years of working corporate, I'm trying to leave corporate and eventually launch my own business around was it my first love? Might be my first love, which is cars. So that's a third one. Whenever I'm not drawing and working on the business, I just love driving my cars and dreaming of getting more cars, which might be a problem. But I'm launching a car business, car storage business, but community based. So there'll be like a place for events and meetings. And it's kind of like having an adult toy shop, because it's going to be my and other people's cars that we, keep in an indoor facility, climate controlled, lounges, mini kart tracks. It's going to be a destination for people who also love cars. And because I'm in the Jersey area, there's a lot of people who have a condensed driving season, because we have that winter that a lot of people don't want to have their nice cars out when they salt the roads for the snow. So, having this condensed driving season kind of brings more, not to make fun of people in nice climates, but there's a different appreciation for your vehicle when you only get to drive it 9 months of the year versus 12 months of the year. So I'm really excited about that. And even the parts that people are like, oh, I can't stand this. I love it because it's my business. I'm investing my time in it. I'm learning about my business, and it's mine. It's as much as I love that whole career track of Apple, Netflix, Airbnb, and Disney, those aren't my companies. I've benefited from them, but that's not me. That's not mine. I'm going to do my thing and be able to hand this down to my daughters. Apple's not going to make sure my daughters have generational wealth. My company will. So I want to move to the point where whatever I build, my daughters could like, you know what, my father did this and I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to pass on to my grandkids and their grandkids. So that's why I'm mostly excited about this.
I love it, Ariem. You are still, even though you're finally doing something for yourself after your entire journey of life, you're still technically doing it for your family yet again. It's really, really fascinating to just hear your life journey and story kind of laid out like this in chapters and phases. And I'm very, very grateful for you spending your time sharing with me your journey and story. And I can't wait to see how this next chapter unfolds.
Hey, man, I appreciate you. Like, you're on this journey with me to get me to this point, and I'm more glad I reached out to you 3 months ago than when I first met you. Because when I first met you, it's like, hey, he's not a cool guy, get to talk. He knows some people I know. But like when I talked to you a few months ago and you started telling me what you were doing at how, I was like, oh man, this is the perfect, and I got excited, and then I joined Owners Club, and then like I'm having a time of my life. And I want to thank you for that because, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing as fast as I'm doing without you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I love it. I appreciate you saying that. And I'm just so grateful to be able to hear the rest of the story because it makes, like, you actually promised it would make more sense and you did not disappoint. Now I understand so much more context, and it's an incredible purpose-driven business in multi-layered and faceted, and very, very grateful for you sharing with us today.
Of course. Thank you,
your
man.
life and story.
I appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you.
And let's do it again whenever you want.
Exactly. I was actually going to say I'm playing around with the idea in season 4 of interviewing the kids of parents that have adult kids. So I may actually ask you if that's possible because there's only I'd say less than half of you guys that I've interviewed that have adult kids. So I may call upon you if I do that with you. It'd be kind of funny,
It would.
Yeah. Hey, watch this interview before I interview you, and then then we're gonna talk about what he said.
Right.
Ariem, we'll talk soon. Okay.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Girl Dad Show. Please take a moment to follow us on social media. You can find us at The Girl Dad Show on all major platforms. We look forward to staying in touch and keeping you up to date with all the new guests that are coming out.